Pepper plants love warm weather, but every plant does have its limits, and excessively high temperatures are actually the #1 cause of low productivity, flower drop, and it can lead to other issues including disease problems and dehydration. So in this video, I'll share some tips to help protect your pepper plants through a heat wave. First of all, let's define what a heat wave is as it relates to pepper plants. Anything above 90 degrees Fahrenheit for, say, 5 days or longer, we'll consider a heat wave as it pertains to peppers. Here in Connecticut, we expect that to happen between 4 and 6 times per year, but it seems to be happening more frequently recently and earlier in the season. For example, it's late June now, and we're already expecting our first heat wave just around the corner. So if that's too hot, what is the ideal temperature? It's really just below that, around 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit during the daytime is perfect for peppers, and around 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit overnight. An easy way to think about this is if you're comfortable going outside, then your pepper plants are probably happy with the temps. Okay, so let's get into what you can do to help your plants get through a heat wave. And the first one is most important, and that is watering more frequently. When it's really hot, your pepper plants will be using more water. They'll transpire water through their leaves. Essentially, the plants are doing the equivalent of sweating in humans to cool themselves off. The hotter it is, the quicker this happens, and also the more leaves on your plants, the quicker that plant can transpire liquid away. So the farther you are into the season, say mid or late summer, the bigger your plants will be, the quicker they're going to use water. Now, it's still important to water slowly and deeply. I like talking about that as a good technique for watering. You want to take it nice and slow and make sure that the water is percolating through all of the areas of soil and getting to the entire root system. But during a heat wave, you'll want to do it more frequently to make sure that your plants aren't dehydrating. Potted plants will be the most vulnerable, again, later in the season when the plants are really big. They have lots of leaves in a relatively small container. Those plants will use a ton of water. You'll need to water them pretty much every single day above that 90 degree Fahrenheit mark, and even sometimes more often, maybe twice or even 3 times per day if you're growing in really small containers. That's one more reason to upsize your containers. In addition to growing larger plants, you'll also have to water those bigger pots less often. Now, when you're watering your plants so often, you'll be washing out nutrients in the process, especially nitrogen. So it's a good idea to fertilize along with your waterings a little more frequently when it's so hot. That way you'll replenish that nitrogen source and your plants can continue to grow. If you do like growing in containers, one other thing to consider here is a sub-irrigated container, and we have a video all about how to make one of these. You should definitely give it a try if you want to grow some really big, healthy pepper plants and not worry so much about watering so often. Basically, it holds some water at the bottom of the container, which will wick up through the soil from the bottom instead of watering from the top. That way you're not washing out those nutrients. They are reabsorbed into the soil from below, and your plant retains more moisture and nutrients over the course of the season. I'll leave a link to that how-to video down below. Drip irrigation can also save you a ton of time. If you live in a place where it gets very hot for a long duration of the season, you'll definitely want to install some form of automated watering system. Drip irrigation is a great one because it waters very slowly right at the base of the plants over a long duration. And the last thing I recommend keeping in mind on the subject of watering during a heat wave is to use cool water. If you store a rain barrel outside, that could be heating up in the sun, especially if it's clear or black. That's going to absorb a lot of the sun's energy, and that water can actually be pretty warm. So tap water will naturally be pretty cool, but if you're storing your water outdoors, make sure to put it off in the shade. Speaking of shade, the next thing you can do to protect your pepper plants during hot weather is to provide them with some shade. This is especially important during the hottest part of the day, which tends to be in the afternoon around 2 or 3 p.m. And to do this, you can use something like shade cloth. 50% shade cloth is a great place to start. You can drape it over your pepper plants in a variety of ways. We have hoops over our raised beds, but you can also suspend it much higher over the plants. And essentially, this just blocks out about 50% of the sun and can reduce the temperature around your plants by 5 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Another option, if you live in a permanent location where it tends to be hot, is to plant your plants along a wall or something that provides shade in the afternoon. So you can intentionally plant your plants on the east side of something taller. Maybe it's a structure or a tree or even just larger vegetables in your garden. That way, when the sun gets to the west side of the sky, those larger objects will be shading your pepper plants. They'll still get plenty of sun in the morning and mid-afternoon, but once you get into the hottest hours of the day, there'll be some shade for your plants. I've actually been very impressed with the results we've had using shade cloth in the last few years. The plants are protected from hot days, but also from insects and wind, which we'll talk about in just a bit. It serves a wide array of uses in the garden and usually results in healthier plants. Another thing you can do to protect your pepper plants in a heat wave is to mulch around the base of the plants. Research shows that mulching your plants reduces soil temperature swings pretty significantly, keeping the soil cooler during a heat wave. The effect seems to be best when you're using a light-colored material, for example straw, because it's going to reflect more of the sun's energy, therefore creating a better buffer to the soil. Most plants tend to like cooler temperatures around their root systems, so this is definitely a benefit. And if the soil does become too warm, there can be some potentially negative implications for your peppers. For example, a study showed that in Australia, higher soil temperatures led to much higher risk for sudden wilt, which is a serious disease in Australia. There are a multitude of other reasons to mulch around your plants. We talk about it pretty often on this channel, so you're probably already mulching your peppers. But if not, a few other things it does is it adds nutrients to the soil, assuming you're using a natural source of mulch like leaf mulch or straw or hay. It helps with water retention in the soil. It also prevents weeds from growing around your pepper plants and competing with them. So there are just so many good benefits to using mulch, and some added protection during a heat wave is just another one. One more thing you can do to help protect your pepper plants during a heat wave is to provide some form of protection from wind coming through your garden. Wind basically just exacerbates the problem with heat and water loss especially, so if you're getting dehydrated plants and you're watering really frequently, providing a windbreak on the wind-bearing side of your garden can be a huge game changer. There are many forms of a windbreak, but you can use live plants like a hedgerow. You can also put up fencing around your garden or just situate your garden near a building or another large structure on the wind-bearing side. Not only will it protect from water loss during a heat wave, but it will also protect from the wind itself. Wind can be pretty damaging, especially in the early season when your plants are pretty small and you've just put them outside. And even in the midsummer when you start getting those summer storms, that can pose a direct threat on your peppers. This is definitely a longer term project. It'll cost some money if you want to build a fence or buy some plants, and those plants will take some time to grow, but it could be a worthwhile investment in the end. As a rule, a windbreak will provide protection at a distance of about 5 to 10 times that windbreak's height. So if your hedgerow is, say, 10 feet tall, it should provide some protection 50 feet away and up to even 100 feet away from that windbreak. Not everything in this video is necessary. Even if you're getting through a heat wave, your plants usually will survive it. Peppers are very resilient through a heat wave, but knowing what to expect during a heat wave at the very least is pretty important. And first off, you should expect to see flower drop on your plants. This is one of the first things peppers will do in very hot weather. They'll basically go into preservation mode. They can't really focus on reproducing, so they'll conserve their energy by dropping flowers. Therefore, you're not going to see many peppers during a heat wave. Pepper plants will use a lot more water during a heat wave, so plan for this. Make sure that you have water on hand and an easy way to irrigate. And finally, it's good to know that once the temperatures do come down to normal range, your peppers should make a full recovery and start producing more flowers and fruits. This is why you may have noticed in the past big healthy plants in the summer but low productivity, and once the fall rolls around, your plants go into high productivity mode. That's exactly what happens here pretty much every year. Now, I know some of you will be laughing at me talking about 90+ degrees being hot. If you live in Texas or one of the other desert-like locations, of course, you're dealing with much higher temperatures. And if you do, leave some comments down below with your tips for dealing with really hot weather. Thanks so much for watching Pepper Geek, and I'll see you soon.